All right. Good morning and welcome to almost our last webinar of the year. I can't even believe it. On the one hand, this year has felt like about a decade long. And then on the other hand, it seems like the older I get, the faster time flies. So it's just disorienting all the way around, and I don't think I'm alone there. But welcome to a really exciting webinar that digitalLIFT has for you today. I'm Becca Wright, and I'll just be kicking us off before our speakers take over. Today, we're going to dive deep into MHM, Methodist Healthcare Ministries, digital divide simulation that they had back in September. This was a large and well-attended event hosted by MHM and conducted by KC Digital Divide. We have some very active participants with us today to talk to us more about how the simulation went, what some of the lessons learned, what some of the next steps are, what some of the implications are for the current political climate, the current just general climate of the digital divide gap within Texas and beyond. So we're really excited to have you with us today. We're going to be talking a little bit more at the end about some exciting online courses that digitalLIFT has, and we're going to be giving away a brand new workshop. As always, especially with the holidays coming up, if you want to take a look at our course catalog and our offerings, here's a QR code for you. And I'll talk a little bit more about some deals that we have at the end, because gifting this to your staff or to friends or maybe some folks who are just beginning their digital navigating journey, it'd be a great holiday gift. But we want to quickly get to today's panel of speakers and presenters, and it really is just going to be more like a conversation. It's going to be facilitated by our very own program manager here, Jess Strum. But we're really excited to have, as I said, 3 active participating organizations from MHM's Digital Divide Simulation. We have Rhea Pape from SA Digital Connects. We have Jordan Pittman, who I think got like maybe 1 or 2 hours of sleep before this. So we're extending him a lot of grace and thanks. Jordan is from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Last but not least, we're very excited to have Elisa Zertucci with us from Family Service. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to Jess to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Strom. I am the Senior Program Manager here at digitalLIFT. I'm going to apologize in advance. Even though I am based in San Antonio, I am coming to you today from rural Massachusetts area. So if I have a delay, Becca will re-pop in for me. So I wanted to kind of give an overview initially of what we were doing and then have our guests introduce themselves as well. So if you've seen what we have on there, the Digital Divide Simulator. For those of y'all that may not be familiar with what that is, but are familiar with the concept of a poverty simulator, it was very much similar in concept to that, but with the full focus on helping community members and organizational leaders and funders understand what that experience is like and hopefully find better solutions and options by working together as our community in the San Antonio and Bexar County and surrounding areas to work together further. So really, as we're getting into that in the conversation, I'd like to start off with Rhea and then everybody else to quickly introduce themselves and their organization.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. Yes, so my name is Rhea Pape. I am the Executive Director of SA Digital Connects. It is a somewhat unique public-private partnership, which is an organization that here in San Antonio and Bexar County works to bridge the digital divide. And through that work, our outcomes and our goals are really about economic development and economic opportunity across our community. And so we really do an intentional, make an intentional effort to connect those dots between bridging the digital divide and what the outcomes are of doing that work, so that our stakeholders, right, our city leaders, our elected officials, our funders, all really understand that it's not, the work itself. It's really about the outcomes of that work that they're investing in. So happy to talk about that a little bit more as we get into it and as we discuss the simulation, but I will hand it over to Jordan now.
Thank you, Rhea. I appreciate it. And great introduction. And Jessica and Becca, thank you for starting us off really strongly. So my name is Jordan Pittman. I am actually based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm in San Antonio, Texas so often that I basically have dual statehood. But I work for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. For anybody that's not familiar, we're a national advocacy nonprofit. So we all remotely work throughout the country, but we do a lot of work in Texas. Everybody's probably familiar with Deanne Cuellar. She is my boss, and she does a lot of great stuff for San Antonio. And she's got me into this space for about 2 years now. And basically, one of the things that we try to focus on at ILSR is fighting corporate monopoly power, but more importantly, working with other organizations just like digitalLIFT, MHM, to promote local power, to be able to have these decisions be made at a local level, because we believe that these communities should be able to make these decisions for themselves. So this space specifically in internet broadband, we've been doing it for about 20 years now. And the goal is to promote not only just fast, affordable internet access, but closing that digital divide that Rhea talked about. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation and just learning what we got from this and where we can move forward. Now I think I'll pass it to Alicia.
Hi, I'm Elisa. I'm from Family Service here in San Antonio, Texas. We are probably, if not for sure, the oldest nonprofit here in San Antonio. And so we've been established for over 100 and something years. We just had another birthday this past month, so I forgot where we're at, but we're definitely up there. And so I'm the digital access coordinator here in our Teen Tech Center at one of our community centers called the Neighborhood Place. And we offer a bunch of different types of services to any age, pretty much, all the way from pregnancy all the way to older adults. And so what my role here is to help provide digital trainings to families in the community, and then also teach out digital literacy skills, work with digital navigators that are youth from high school to college. And so I work with a group of 4 right now. And we just really try to connect our families to resources in the community to help, provide hotspots, devices. If we don't have the devices, then we'll definitely find someone to help provide those resources, and then teach the families how to use those resources to the best of their ability to help whatever their goal is or whatever situation they're in, and just connect them and promote the awareness of the digital divide to everyone that comes through our doors, to let them know, like, we're here to help you, but also this is what's going on in our community. We also have, not just in San Antonio, but in our surrounding counties, we have a bunch of different sites as well. I want to say it's over 15 counties, maybe. I don't have the number on hand, but we have other sites in one of our more rural areas. And so we do the same thing over there for our rural community as well.
Thank you. So getting into meat and potatoes section. So I want to give some additional background really quickly for those who may not be familiar with the MHM acronym. That is in reference to Methodist Healthcare Ministries, so unfortunately isn't able to be on with us today. But all of these organizations on, and then many of you in the chat as well, are very familiar with MHM, who is an incredible funder organization in the Bexar County area, and also funds within their other South and Central Texas service region. And Monica and were a big reason why we were able to get the simulator done and funded for our area. So as always, a huge thank you to MHM and all of their team for funding the work that they are doing. With that, because SA Digital Connects was the other primary organization helping to help fund and get the planning portion, getting that off the ground and getting the sponsorship stuff done for the day. Ria, would you give some more detailed background on how we all came together for that and the thought process behind why we started discussing having the simulator?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jess. Yeah, so we partnered with MHM, and as Jess said, Monica's traveling today, and otherwise she would have been on the call here with us to talk about this. But we were really intent on ensuring, we've got this partnership, we have momentum. There has been significant changes in funding, at the federal and state level this year. And so we were really intent on creating a space that brought together all of our stakeholders to provide updates, but also to ensure that that we really are continuing to connect the dots between their work, right? Their daily work, if they're bankers, if they're a city manager, or they work in, the housing or economic development department at the city, if they are another nonprofit leader or an educator. We wanted to be sure that they understood and had a real meaningful experience in understanding how the digital divide, at the many layers of the digital divide, impact the people that they're serving, the people that they work with. Because a lot of times, that elevator pitch that we're all told to have and to be ready with just isn't enough, right? It needs time, it needs conversation, it needs those dot connections. And so this was our opportunity to do that. The simulation was an amazing experience for those leaders that we brought together. Again, we were very intentional about who we brought into the room. Folks that are tangential in their work to the digital divide, folks that have work that impacts either increasing that divide or decreasing the divide in their own spaces. The experience was really, truly enlightening, not just for the people that we had there that joined us, but also for us as hosts with the other partners that helped us get everything situated. Because we had many partners, right? Like Jess and digitalLIFT and ILSR and Family Service. We all came together as a core group to really think through who needed to be in that room, why they needed to be in that room, and to get them there, right? We had elected officials, we had executive directors of nonprofits and economic development departments. And so it's not easy to get folks like that in the room sometimes. So we had to pitch it and make that case, and it took time, and we made it happen. But in the end, it was really a great way for us to come together and share thoughtful conversations, candid conversations. And what we did leave with was this new energy to continue this work forward. I think a lot of attendees shared with us that it fundamentally changed the way that they view digital inclusion, that they don't see it as a technical issue anymore. It sounds very technical. It is very hard. It's not tangible. It's hard to understand because there's so many layers to what the digital divide means. But they understand now through that experience that It's not just a technical issue. It's a daily barrier that affects employment opportunities and educational attainment and healthcare, access to quality healthcare, and overall quality of life.
Thank you, Ria. It was a really fantastic day in the participation that we had. We had a full room. And one of the things I want to stress to everybody listening, yes, we did this for San Antonio Bexar County, but this is replicable in other areas through KC Digital Drive and building out coalitions and those groups working together in your areas. Particularly for funders, one of the things that MHM has done really, really well is being able to get those of us who are grantees working together collaboratively, both on the grant deliverables that we have, but also in so many of these other ways and other facets, and being able to try and make some of those conversations clearer for people that can really do some of those things. And it's because of RIA and ILSR and Family Service and the connections that our organizations all have collectively that are able to help bring some of those people that might not necessarily be able to get into the room otherwise, or be able to make the time and space to do that, to actually get them in the room. And RIA and SA Digital Connects is a big part in getting many of those names in there. With that, I wanted to, I'm going to come back to part of that in a moment, but I wanted to pivot slightly and talk about some of the things that we, during this planning process, were going over, and different facets of things that we needed. We knew that we were going to need computers to be able to pull off the simulation. So we were able to reach out to Bibliotech, which is our county library system here in Bexar County, and be able to have Bibliotech and their navigators and devices from the county library system there for the day to be able to have participants utilize. We were looking at all kinds of facets, from adjusting the personality profiles that people get. So again, similar to a poverty simulator where you're assigned a person or a family group, everyone was assigned an individual person profile. And we wanted to really make sure that that was tailored to the San Antonio and surrounding areas. And Deanne and I worked really heavily on those. And one of the things that Deanne wanted to really make sure of is that we have accuracy in what is represented for access, because that's something that I know ILSR works on, is actually making sure that that is in fact what it says it is in some of those areas. So Jordan, I wanted to see if you can touch on really quickly some of what y'all look at for those data points, because a lot of the times when we talk about bridging digital divide, we think of just the digital skills portion, but that data and that accuracy and understanding where that broadband or internet access is and what that looks like is a big part of that conversation.
No, absolutely, Jess. And to your point, digital skills is essential, right? Like we don't want to dismiss that at all. But there's like these the three like pillars of the stool that we talk about. There's the digital skills aspect of understanding, like you gotta know how to use a device. It doesn't matter if the connection's there if you don't know how to actually be able to take advantage of that. That's one thing. But we also talk about the infrastructure aspect of like where is these connections actually made, and on top of that, even just beyond the skill set, like do they even just feel comfortable even using the technology? So like all these things are something that Deanne and I know the rest of you guys and us included thought about that when it comes to the simulator. It's like it's not just about just any sort of scenario. We want to make sure that these are things that people actually experience on the day to day, and that's what we see. Our team, like we work across the country, like we do work in Texas, but we also do work in California. We do work in the Southeast, we do in Appalachian Mountains, and what's consistent here is this sort of idea of the centralization and the importance of what internet connection is for a lot of folks, and seeing how access means different for a lot of folks. That includes like education, kids being able to connect to their Chromebooks or being able to do that at home, or the incapacity to actually do something like that. We're talking about telehealth. We're talking about these very different things when it comes to what access actually means. So, and then there's another twist on top of that where, it comes to the simulation is more than just access, is also this idea of affordability, right? It's like, okay, like, is it affordable to actually be able to have this connection in the first place? Like, there's so many factors that go into it, and I think the simulator did a good job of putting people in the shoes of what it's like to kind of experience this. Because I think, because for myself personally, I've actually been through a poverty simulator before, and I think is one of those situations where it truly hits different when you're actually living through that experience. And the simulator is not like a one-to-one ratio, but what it does is really gets you into like the thick of like what it's like on the day-to-day to have these sort of experiences, to where now from your standpoint, wherever that's a privileged standpoint or you don't have to deal with those issues, it allows you to have a better lens of being, okay, what can I do for my nonprofit or from my like stakeholder position? What can I do to make sure that we're pushing towards a future where this isn't really, these issues aren't a problem? Like the goal here, and we all can agree, those any of those things that we did during the simulating, like we don't want that to happen anymore. We don't want kids to have to go to McDonald's to like do their homework. Like the idea is that we go through these things so it's like, wow, I didn't know it was still like that. Um, and I think that's part of the work that we do at LSR as well as, and I'm kind of rambling a little bit, Jess, so if you need me to like pull back if I'm taking some of your questions, but um, like I think BEAT funding, like the final proposal came out for Texas and from other states. And I think from our own research and data, it's shown that if you actually look at Texas, for example, when you look at their 5-year plan, they said that from public and private investment, they're going to need about $10 billion to make sure that every Texan is connected. But then when you see the final tally, I mean, we're talking about the final number being maybe about 1 billion, about half of that going towards satellite. So the idea is, well, um, for a lot of folks, oh yeah, we don't have to worry about this internet stuff anymore. Didn't that money come out from like the Biden administration? Yeah, we don't have to worry about this anymore. But the reality is, this is going to continue to be an issue. We're going to, because of how funding is being cut out now, there's definitely a scenario in play where we're going to have to put more funding again in this in the future. So this isn't going away. So we want to look at this issue as something as like a one-stop fix. Here's a band-aid and it's done. The simulator is a constant reminder that this is happening right now every single day for a lot of those scenarios that we played out. So it's one of those where we can do stuff right now, but also understanding that what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again moving forward. And that's what Jess was talking about, making sure the maps are right, making sure the data points, telling stories, like, and that's probably a question later on, but like storytelling is essential. Like just knowing that there's situations like there for kids and adults, older adults, wherever the case may be, that are going through these day-to-day issues, to highlight them, to be like, hey, this is a thing and this is why it's important that we address it. So there's a lot of things that we can tap to in that, but I'll stop there.
So thank you, Jordan. And that story aspect is a huge portion of getting people to understand and better place themselves in someone else's shoes, and having the very different personality profile, often with a very different age or gender that that person has been assigned, and putting them forcibly through some very frustrating interactions to get people to think about things in a different way. And even for people that are very familiar with certain aspects of the work or in aspects of portions of the community, like housing, etc., there were still some very eye-opening moments. And I think back to Michael, who is the CEO, executive director of Opportunity Home, the housing authority in San Antonio, who's very, very familiar with everything going on. And he was sitting at one of the computer lab stations, and I said, "Oh no, the computer has gone down. You must now wait for, the 5 minutes of time." And when your week is only broken up into a short chunk of time in the simulator, he looked at me and was like, "You clocked me on purpose." And I was like, "Maybe." But I loved at the end hearing people's experiences and real frustrations going through that and going, I want to figure out how to make this better for XYZ section of community members that they're serving. Which brings me to, Alicia, I wanted to get your 2 cents and feedback as someone that was more dropped in on the day of helping with that side of the day of, and being on the personality side of, here you're assigned to this particular subsection, and causing some of the frustration points and blocks for those people participating in the simulator, how that was for you, and anything that you drew out of that for yourself, and kind of what you were looking at trying to do while you were participating in that.
Yeah, so I loved how when y'all were organizing it and it's explaining it to us, especially like I think as someone who just came in, who I've never been a part of a simulator in any capacity, so this was my first time overall, and I think it was a very, very smart decision to make, when you're passing out the personalities on like which office you're going to work in, which location you're going to be stationed at, to say like, if you're doing this in your day-to-day job, like in real life, pass it on to someone else who's never been in that role before. And so I was actually, I work with digital navigators on the daily. And so I was handed the digital navigator packet and I was like, I can't do this one. Like I do it every day. And so I passed it off to my supervisor who oversees us, but she's never really in it. And so I ended up with the government position. And so I was at the government office and people were coming to me to apply for benefits and, look into VA benefits and different types of everything. I think even like to get driver's license copies and social security copies. And so we had a bunch of people coming up to me and they're like, how do I apply? And I'm like, well, you have to go online. We don't have paper copies anymore. And they're like, well, I can't get on. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I can show you where to go, but I can't, give you the copy. You can do it, at the McDonald's down the street for 30 minutes if you have a device, or you can wait in the really, really, really long line at the library because everybody was going to the library. And so it just felt, I could see the discouragement on their face when I just basically had to tell them like, I could tell you where to go, but I can't help you here. And so to give people that perspective, and even just me being on the like kind of inside outside of it, not being the one turning them away, or not being the one turned away, but turning them away really hurt me, especially that I work at a nonprofit, and that's my job, is to help them. But to kind of show that perspective of like, it's not as easy to just say like, oh, just apply for benefits. Like, there's so many barriers that go into it. And when someone says like, well, why don't they just do it that way? Why don't they just do this and just apply, just go to the library? And it's like, it's not as simple as we say it is. So it was a really, really unique experience to be on that side of turning things away. I think people even told me like, you're the government, like you're supposed to be able to help me. And I'm like, I'm supposed to, but I can't. And so to see my supervisor who oversees the program, but is helping people with the digital navigating, it was also a unique experience because and maybe I'm jumping into the future questions a little bit, but at the end, when we were talking with our table, we were facilitating the questions. We had a group of students from UTSA, and they were so excited to talk about it. They've experienced certain things, but they've never put it in that perspective of like, this is a bigger issue than we thought it was. Like my Wi-Fi goes down and I have to figure out where to go. But they don't think about the bigger picture of it. And so they were just so excited to talk about it in like ways like we can bring this attention to everybody of all ages, even starting in like middle school. So it was a really unique experience.
I love what you said about there were a lot of us that day, I think, fighting our better natures of, oh, yes, of course, we're going to help with this thing. It's no, wait, we're supposed to make this difficult today. We're not supposed to do what we normally do and like actively try and better assist through the situation. And you did perfectly into the table conversation that I was going to open up to all of you, in that after the actual timeline of the simulator, we had the introductory portion, then we have everyone have their assignment, and then people go through their weeks, which are 15 to 20 minute chunk breakdowns of here's your 15-minute week, here's your 15-minute week, here's your 15-minute week. And then your month is done. And you have to get these XYZ tasks accomplished, if you can, during your month, during your week. And after that, we had the table conversation and some facilitated discussions through that. And I was wondering anything that y'all wanted to provide, like you said, with the UTSA students, anything that y'all wanted to provide feedback on, Rhea, et cetera, on anything that was brought up during those discussions that was a unique point or a interesting barrier point that someone hadn't thought about, or any of the fruit that came out of some of those discussions, and even some of the frustration moments at the tables with that.
Yeah, I'll just mention, so I had a couple of folks, come up to me that toward the end or reach out to me even after, and we had conversations about it. There were a couple of things that stood out. We had our executive director of Ready to Work, which is a workforce program here in San Antonio. And he said, Rhea, you've been telling me, about this. You've been telling me about the digital divide. You've been telling me about the partnership and the work that y'all are doing. And I understood it. And I got it, and it makes sense. And I supported your work and all those things. And he said, but it wasn't until I experienced it and I really went through this process and real life scenario type situation that I actually get it now. I see it, I felt it, and it became real to me. And he said, so, that is something that you could really take back with him, and not just have that, in his mind as they're doing work or they're developing programs, but really use that knowledge, that new information, to create change within their current programs. So I thought that was really special. I think that, the UTSA students, our local university here in San Antonio, really awesome to have this new generation of workforce coming up, understand this issue. As they get into the workforce, they graduate high school, they get into the workforce, it's going to look different, right? Every single year, every 6 months, there's change, the technology evolves and the needs evolve, and workforce demands shift. And so it's going to look different, but fundamentally they understand the issue. And I had one other thought and I don't recall, but there was just there was a great response to the idea that people could now really take something with them. Because as I said, I can get in front of someone, I can have meetings with people, I can show them amazing slides and tell videos of the work that we've done, and say look at this, it's so impactful, it's so important. And they say, yes, great, good job. And, we sort of go on our separate ways. And that is no longer the case, right, for our community and for those key stakeholders. So we, highly encourage an experience like this for your own communities. And I don't want to get off topic, but I see Leslie with Casey Digital Drive. So please reach out to them if this is something that, you think your community could benefit from, because we will do it again.
Can I
Yes, and on that point, yeah. Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a short comment to something that Rhea had said. On top of the UTSA students, to have these simulators accessible to, people in the public. Because I know that they were saying, like, had they not been so far into their college career, their junior year, they've already decided where they want to go. They were like super excited to push this forward and maybe pursue a career in some kind of nonprofit world, or something along the lines to address these issues. So that would definitely open the conversation even more and take this a lot further. So they were really excited, and they wanted to, have this conversation a long time ago to influence whatever career paths they went on. So having it earlier for younger people would definitely help.
Definitely. And that brings me back to this experience is replicable. Both, this is something that we're going to hopefully be doing again in the South Texas region. MHM, I know, is planning on having that continue. And also in other areas, this is startable and replicable. Obviously, it's a lot nicer for us here because we have a funder organization that's really invested in doing that and helping other funders also understand why this is important. But Casey Digital Drive, like Leslie is on, they have developed that. They're able to bring that into communities all over the country. And so this is not an exclusive thing to San Antonio and Bexar County. This is replicable in whatever area you are in, and that is something that can really help push forward other initiatives within the community and be able to get other community organizations that do this work in some capacity to be able to expand that, to think about this in other ways, to be able to help collectively move this work forward, because we have, unfortunately, so many new funding barriers where we weren't going to originally with some of those federal dollars, et cetera, that were supposed to come down that now have been permanently on hold. With that, opening up to some of the conversation around why this is important with the funding side and how else we can utilize these types of community events to, as you said, get community members invested to be able to get further push for everything else along the way. And then what that looks like when we're inviting, for-profit organizations, companies, etc., how we have some of those conversations, especially in other areas where maybe there isn't as much investment as there is in the San Antonio, Bexar County area, to be able to start to facilitate some of those conversations, and then what that looks like as far as data and numbers and things that we need to be able to present and have conversations on. And Jordan, I'd love you to hop in on the data side in a moment, but Rhea, I would love for you to weigh in on having the more economic development conversations around some of that within. One funder can't take on everything and solve all the problems of the world because there's limitations there, but how we involve some of those other groups to try and build out for community expansion for the long term.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be brief so we can hear from Jordan on that data side, because that's a really important piece here. So yeah, the economic development piece, we learned early on in the partnership that unfortunately, right, you have to speak the funder's language. So we knew we were working toward bridging the digital divide. We said that, but we really leaned in on the outcomes of that work, which are economic development, economic mobility, and security for your community. That's what a lot of these funders like to hear. They want the city that they are based in to grow because then their businesses grow, right? So when it comes down to it, it's all about economics, and that is not a cliche. We've got amazing funders here in San Antonio Bexar County. There's a lot of them. They don't necessarily have deep pockets, because we've got so many nonprofits that are doing work. We are the 7th largest city in the country. We are one of the quote unquote poorest. That report came out recently, one of the poorest urban cities in the country. And so our community leaders, our corporate leaders and industry leaders, they know there's work to be done. They know there's philanthropic need and places for their monies to go. And so they're here and they're ready, but there's a lot to happen. And so, we've got to be able to partner regional partners, other cities and counties, local government partners, and corporate partners, right? It's a tricky topic, and Jordan and I, we can debate it all we want, but the corporate side, like, if you find the right person there, they get it, they're easy to work with. They want you to do well, and they want to support the growth of that community. And sometimes it works out. So, but it takes coordination, and it takes planning, and it takes a strategic plan. So, again, happy to connect with any of y'all after this call just about the model itself. Have lots of those conversations. So, again, I'll hand it to Jordan on the data side. That is really, truly what informs the work. So we definitely should talk about that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ria. And we can debate about this all day if you want. I'm happy to. Debate seems more aggressive or just like conversations, and that goes for anybody on the call. But to the data side, just quickly, I just wanted to say, the Community Broadband Networks team, the initiative that I work with, we have this phrase called the cost of doing nothing, and it's this idea of yes, like it seems kind of a lot to be like, hey, we need to invest in devices. We need to invest in infrastructure to make sure that everybody's well connected. We need to make sure that it's affordable. We need to do all these things. And from an economic standpoint, it can seem on the front end, well, yeah, that's a little bit of an investment, especially if you want to do something physical like fiber optics as compared to something like satellite, for example. Like these are all huge investments, but the idea, which the original Jobs Act was supposed to be investing into San Antonio, investing into these rural parts outside of San Antonio and Bexar County to make sure that people have what they need so the city and the counties around it can be as successful as they possibly can be. As we shift towards, and we've been talking about this a lot throughout the webinar, everything's going digital. You can't go to any sort of government agency without being like, well, it's digital now. There's no papers for that. So like everything's digital to this point, and it's basically the equivalent of what I like to say. It's like basically telling people, hey man, water is very important, right? You need 8 cups a day for water. Oh, by the way, the only access you have to water is that dirty well over there, and we might not fix it for the next 20 years. But if we do, this is what you got. So I feel like that's very equivalent to what it is now, is where everything's moving, everything's growing, like Rhea said, and shifting. But at its core, everything is being tied to being online. So we can't simultaneously put things online, but then don't give people the tools, resources, and the accessibility to make it possible for them. So to the data point, it's just like it's so critical for us to show stakeholders, not just the simulation, because I think that experience of feeling it is like, yeah, a stakeholder can come in and be like, yeah, I can see that this is important, but how can I put this in the budget to make sure this works for us for as a nonprofit, as a for-profit, as the government agencies, right? So it's important to have good data to show like, hey, that could be something as simple as like, doing a neighborhood and doing speed tests and just being like, hey, according to the FCC map that shows where people are connected, it says that this neighborhood in San Antonio is good, but when we did speed tests, here's the numbers, and we're showing you that they're not connected at all. So like, data is a gold mine, data is money. So like it's this idea of we can say all day that this is an important thing, and I think everybody on this call would agree with that, but being able to show the numbers that show like, hey, despite what's being shown, these people are still unconnected. They still can't have the resources they need to be successful. And I think, and we can show on top of that, with these investments in mind, it can make San Antonio better, it can make Texas better, it can just make the country better in general. Because what we find is, Chattanooga is a great example because they're just like kind of the city on the hill with like smart cities and like how they've constructed it. But this idea of like when you put investment into your future, what you find is that it brings people to your city. It brings jobs. It brings this idea of like, okay, um, I'm able to, even if I work remotely, be able to move to San Antonio because I know they have a good connection there. Like I lived in Chattanooga for a couple of years, and one of the things that pulled me was like, well, EPP has great, connection there. You'll be surprised at how much that really pulls people in. And even it's just the little day-to-day things that you can't even quantify with numbers, but you can tell again these stories about people being able to do their homework at home or be able to take a telehealth call in their house without having to, drive an hour or two out to the nearest hospital. Like these things really matter, and it really goes into the importance of letting people know about this, not just on the data side, but also just getting people exposed to this very idea that we still very much have a huge part to play in making sure that everybody's connected.
Thank you, Jordan. And I think you bring up, and I'll wrap with this, an additional good point on when we're talking about those stories, and it's not just numbers, it's the impact and the real human connection portion that has. And one of the people that we had in the room that day, whom I love dearly, who isn't on today, but she will find out that I'm throwing her name in the ring again. One of the navigators from Opportunity Home, Belinda, who started out as a student, started taking the computer literacy courses, now is an AmeriCorps Vista and teaching those courses and helping to bring that out to others, but then is able to have conversations with others in the room about this is my real life, this is my impact, and this is how these things have benefited and changed my life. And she just finished her associate's degree with a 4.0. I will always brag on her for that. And all of these, all of the incredible things that there's several people with that lived experience in the room that day that are at the tables at other facets, able to help share those experiences. And so when we're looking at replicating these in other areas, replicating this again in different facets, those are all people. Of course, we want people that can help fund, that can help be some of those power players in different facets around the community, but also having people with those voices and that real story of how those numbers impact real people, to be able to put a face to something, to be able to put a real human being in front of someone else. And it's really hard to deny when you have a person in front of you saying, this has changed something for me. And I'll throw this back to you, Becca, here in 2 seconds. I'll do kind of my final thoughts on the simulator when we were going through everything and wrap up and doing all of that, is that when you have a funder like MHM, and when you have an area, we're really fortunate in San Antonio where it's kind of a big city, small town vibe, and that we have a lot of people that know each other and a lot of people that have, fewer and fewer degrees of separation, that are able to go, oh yeah, let me call so-and-so because they're, related to my neighbor's cat, or, what have you, to be able to bring in and help really strengthen some of those organizations. And when you're wanting to replicate this, especially if you don't have a funder that is stepping forward like MHM did and willing to put the initial finances in to help bring this together. Coming from the reverse end, showing funders and other corporate groups, people that are wanting to make investments into the community, that your community organizations are in fact talking to each other, interconnected, and showing how organizations are working together to utilize their programs and build those things responsibly, build that capacity there for each other, and also showing how through that connectivity, those funder dollars are really well invested in those connected community organizations because of what can happen and what those organizations can build with some of these things. So I wanted to get anybody's kind of initial final thoughts, and then I'll pass that over to Becca because I know we need to wrap up here in just a moment. And lastly, I believe that Becca will also be sharing out Casey Digital Drive's information in the wrap up from the webinar for anybody that's wanting to bring this to their area. Definitely something I recommend. Yes, Jordan.
Yeah, I didn't want to cut you off, Jess. I just wanted to jump on that last thought.
No, please.
Because I gotta leave a little early, and I just want to say thank you, digitalLIFT,
Yes.
like everybody that's been associated with this. This was a wonderful experience. But my last thought that we also always talk about LSR is like I think there's this notion that if things are good, that they were just naturally be known. And sometimes the idea is you don't know what you don't know. So I always like to use this phrase like narrative warfare is like you kind of have to shape the narrative to what you think people need to know, especially if it's a well-intended thing, because if it's not something that you deliberately make an effort to do, that space will be filled with stuff that's not great. So like these sort of simulations, these conversations are always super important. Uplifting storytelling is also super important because this is an essential thing. But I always like to joke also that if anybody watched Friends, like my friends used to joke that I was like the Chandler Bing of my friend group. 'Cause they're just like, Jordan, I don't know what you do. And I would tell them what I would do. And they're just like, but that's not really an issue. Like everybody has a Wi-Fi box. So like even like a normal person would not assume that this is such a big thing until you have these conversations. You hear these stories from people that have to experience this every single day. And this doesn't even have to be a COVID thing. COVID was almost 6 years ago. Like, and this is still a thing. So it's just like it's one of those things where we're almost half a decade past something like this, and we're still having this issue, and this is going to continue to be an issue. So we have to get people to understand that this is still a thing, whether that's by simulations, by public events to let them know this is important, storytelling. This is all essential to make sure we get this done because we need to get this done. This is essential, and this is something that we truly need to be not only great for San Antonio, but for the country as well. So I appreciate y'all's time today, and I hope y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate you hanging out for an extra minute. Again, Rhea, any last thoughts? And then Becca.
I can go and then Rhea can finish it off. I just wanted to say again, everything Jordan said, it is really good to have this exposure and keep those conversations going. And I know I keep bringing up youth, and maybe it's just because I work directly with them all the time, so they're always on my mind, but just having them be involved in as many conversations as you can. They don't know what they don't know, but when you bring up that they're not the only ones having these issues, having, these families aren't the only ones going through it. And they might know, but they might not make that connection that it's a really bigger problem, or that, technology is even that much like it's still considered a luxury in some people's minds, and they're like, oh no, I don't need to know how to use tap to pay. Like I don't need to know, like if it's cashless, we'll just go somewhere else. But that's where we're going. And so teaching these families that this is not something to be afraid of, it's something you can use to your benefit to keep, you moving forward, and having them just be aware. And they're so eager and ready to like jump and fix things and help people. So they will really take whatever you're doing even further. And they're a part of the next generation, the next workforce, and giving them those opportunities, as young interns, shadowing different opportunities, because these are people who won't have who don't know how to ask for internship opportunities, don't know how to write a resume. And, these are things that they need to learn when they're young. That way they don't have the same mistakes that we all did learning how to do it, because we've done it so we can help them. So just being there for your youth and having them involved in these conversations.
A perfect way to show an impact point. Rhea?
Yep, totally. Just double down. I agree with Elisa. Bring the youth in as early as possible. But that's all. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime. And thank you, Jess, for facilitating. Thank you, Becca, for having us.
Thank you. I love ending kind of on the youth too. It's a very sort of hopeful way to move forward. Just to wrap up our conversations here, please don't go anywhere yet. I've received a couple of chat questions. And so what we'll do in our usual email that we send out next week as a follow-up, we will make sure that we give you some contact info and that we answer some of those questions. Also, before we do our giveaway and a couple of announcements, I do just want to give credit once again to Methodist Healthcare Ministries and to draw your attention to KC Digital Drives simulation. We've actually featured them in a prior webinar. Leslie, thank you. But we will also send out that information in the follow-up email as well. Just a couple of super quick announcements, because we thank you so much for attending and still being so actively engaged. Last webinar of the year, and it's going to be a doozy. So mark your calendar. Go ahead and register now by following this QR code. This will be up on our website momentarily as well, and you can register there. We're saving the best for last, people. We're doing the gift of digital inclusion. It's going to be a packed webinar of special guest speakers from all over the spectrum in our industry. We're going to have partners, we're going to have leaders, we're going to have learners, digital navigators. We're going to have some of our own staff. We're going to have some of you, and we're going to give 12 fabulous giveaways, ranging from multilingual curriculum, online courses, some of our new workshops. But please join us as well, because these are going to be success stories from what has been undeniably a challenging year. And we're going to have strategies for resilience. We're going to have tips for how to plan moving into the new year in your program. So this is going to be part feel good, part practical, part celebration, part getting ready to rest, and then getting geared up for a new year. So please join us for that. We're offering a sale on our digital equity and healthcare course. Again, moving into the holidays, if you want to gift this for your staff, if you want to buy this as a gift for someone else, 25% off from today through the 27th using the coupon code DEHC capital NOV25. We'll send this out to folks as well. Last but not least, here is our giveaway. I'm sorry if I butcher names, please forgive me. We are giving a free smartphone fundamentals workshop to the following folks. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. This is a $75 giveaway that comes with absolutely everything you need to give this workshop. So I will be following up with Mandy Travis, Hector Avila, Marin Kyle, and Mark Pearson. So I will be following up with you as well. We're right at 1 o'clock. If you have any questions or comments that we haven't addressed or that you haven't put in chat, please email us at lift@digitallift.org. We will make sure that we address those comments and concerns and questions when we send out the follow-up email next week. A special thank you to Jess, Rhea, Jordan, and Elisa. And we have enjoyed so much having you all. Enjoy the fall holiday break next week, and a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you December 11th.